Hello there, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Sabah92. This is Chaos Head. Well, we got to experience the Yua route. I just broke my fucking finger. So we learned that Yua is actually Mia. The two apparently swap places. And after one died, the other one had a mental breakdown. And needless to say, I stand by what I said. Or I don't know if I really said it. I don't know. This one, arguably the better one. That ending was probably better than... it was infinitely better than the Nanami route. It still left so many... there are still so many questions that need answered. Like, it left... It's kind of sad, in a way, with how that ended. It really just looks like the world's just ruined, and it's just Takumi and Mia. It's just sad. But I still stand by it. Still the better ending. And as somebody that was mostly interested in Yua in the first place, I would say that route definitely satisfied it. Definitely satisfactory. So it looks like our next one's going to be the Ayase route. I am expecting potential weirdness. Ayase is a bit of a interesting character, so I imagine that her route is going to be focused around more stuff involving the Knights of Gladiol. Maybe there's a higher chance of Takumi awakening his D-sword in this particular route, possibly. Considering Ayase herself has her D-sword, so maybe that incentivizes Takumi to unlock his. Who knows? Anyway, going down on this list, thankfully we don't have to go through the opening chapter. We just have to go through chapter 2 and wait till till we get to a delusion that says, "Looked at me," and then we choose negative, and then yes, no, yes, yes, yes. Got it. Time for some delightful skippage, shall we? There it is. Negative time! And here's where we get the depressing image and then fall. Oh, never mind. Here it is. Fez must be asking me for salvation. Yes. I want to give in to Fez's seduction. No. I'm sure... What? I'm sure jumping off would feel amazing. What the fuck? Okay, so there might have been a bit of a break in the recording here. I thought for a split second I heard somebody cough, so I kind of freaked out a little bit. Okay. Maybe I'm suffering delusions now. I'm sure jumping off would feel amazing. Why do I have to say yes? No! It wants me to say yes to this! Ugh! I don't care if I die as long as it's together with Fez. Okay, so she's gonna be our obsession this route. Got it. I want to be set free from everything. Okay. And pound in the steak. Discovered Ayase's story. Why does it have that image as the achievement? I don't want... Ew. Why you gotta have why? Oh, hello. As morning progressed, Kishimoto Ayase stood before the school gate, watching the sky absent-mindedly. Students passed by on either side, and she paid no attention to the strange looks she received from them. Her gaze was full of emptiness. From her perspective, school was utterly pointless. Her reasoning being... she knew the world would end very soon. Even as a third year, she felt out of place wearing a school uniform. This was no time to be attending school. So she believed. Still, she occasionally went in order to continue her search for the gate and the other Black Knights. Sume Academy was the place where the Black Knights would gather. Or rather, It was the place where they would be gathered. That was the conclusion she had reached. From a young age, Ayase had been seen as a problem child. She never finished middle school, thus preventing her from enrolling in high school. In spite of this, she transferred into Sume Academy during May of her first year. A day she remembered vividly, even now. She had stood before the gate on that day, just as she was now. Until then... Oh, don't show me the images. She had been institutionalized by Arc Heart Medical. During that time, she endured a hellish trial in order to become a Black Knight. 1 month of psychiatric treatment later, and she was finally discharged. The hospital's director, a man whose name she had long since forgotten, spoke to her at that time. Starting tomorrow, you'll be attending high school in Shibuya at Sume Academy. I've done all the work needed to enroll you already. She was not told why. Those words still in her mind, the day she had arrived before the school gate, she murmured something to herself.
天空赤く染まるとき、邪神王の帯同と呼応し、7つの黒き邪神は生まれ、やがて聖域へと召喚される。
Well, that's fucking ominous.
そして宣言するのだ。悪夢よ、最悪よ、暗黒なる肉塊たちよ。邪神により邪神をほふられ、邪神王が支配する世界は砕け散ると。
They were verses of the legend from the Gladjul book of Psalms and Revelation, a prophecy Ayase had taken to heart. One she uttered only because she knew now for certain. This was the gathering place of the Black Knights. Thus she would continue waiting. Thus she would continue searching. And as time passed, she had never felt a single trace of wickedness until now. At least, she could sense a presence. The presence of a potential Black Knight. It had certainly kept her waiting, but the change was wholly a welcome one.
もう時間はないわ。グラジオールの復活はすぐそこ。
Her words, a faint, quiet murmur. Another Black Knight. With this thought, Ayase passed through the gate, seeking the boy she had met at the concert venue. Our boy Taku? You know, the funny thing is, I've been trying to get myself into properly pronouncing Japanese character names. It's taken me a lot. It's taken me a while here. But since this kind of, this novel has been kind of helping me, like, hey, you're supposed to put emphasis on the first syllable of a name, rather than later symbols, like most American kind of pronunciations. Like, I'll give an example. For the longest time, I've always pronounced this character name as Makoto, when its actual pronunciation is Makoto. Ergo, say example like Takumi. It's Takumi, not Takumi. Where like a long time I kind of pronounce it as Takumi. But no, it's Takumi. It is very interesting trying to learn how... I mean, it's probably not the same for like all of names like that, but it is fun trying to get into that headspace of pronouncing said names correctly. Like, another example. Instead of Nanami, it's Nanami. Anyway, I probably am dumb rambling. We're probably just going to keep on skipping until we get to some more Ayase-related stuff. If I had to gander a guess, because now we're in the D-Sword section. Woo! Oh, finally, something new here. According to the minimum attendance chart, I didn't have to go to school today. But despite that, I came to school anyway for one reason, and one reason only. To see Remy. I had no doubt that the DQNs in class would make fun of me just like they always did. It would definitely suck, but if it meant I could see Remy, I could endure it. It was also possible that Shogun could show up again. He seemed to be playing with me like it was some kind of game after all. Maybe he'd feel like sending me on another quest soon. Just the thought alone terrified me. I tried to grasp my D-sword, but even that was just to protect myself from him. Without that sword, how could I ever hope to escape his evil clutches? Maybe if Rimi was by my side like she said she would be, but she'd been absent from school lately, which worried me. What if she'd been taken hostage, just like Nanami? Was there anyone out there who could help me? Ayase's could help you. I entered the classroom with my head pointed straight at the floor. Before taking my seat, I took a quick look around. I looked toward Rimi's seat first. Empty. Was she taking today off too? Was it really that simple? Was she really just taking time off? I began to feel anxious. Next, I looked over at Kozupi's desk. She was in her seat, face down and huddled up. Morning, Kozupi. I didn't make eye contact, but I greeted her with my inner voice. The female DQNs are watching me, smirking. It was no different than yesterday. They'd already labeled me as that otaku freak who said he was psychic and made an ass of himself on TV. And that label wasn't going away anytime soon. The male DQNs didn't seem to have arrived yet. It's pretty common for them to skip first period, and that was fine by me. I took my seat. Suddenly, someone clapped me on the back. Hey. It was Misumi-kun. That was another thing. Misumi. Not Misumi. Misumi. With an uncomfortable look on his face. His slap was a lot weaker than usual. You certainly had no issue ignoring me before. Why start paying attention to me now all of a sudden? I'm sure that you'll regret talking to me. You'll become the DQN's next target, just like me. Yeah, Misumi-kun, even you. You'd be better off not associating with an otaku freak like me. I remained silent, but Misumi-kun forced a smile. As harsh as his words were, I didn't get the feeling that he was joking or acting sarcastic. After all, it was pretty common for him to say stuff like that. Pardon? Really?
でもまあ、いろいろ考えて、やっぱ今まで通りで行くことにしたからよ。よろしくな。
He had an indifferent expression on his face. You seriously want to keep talking with me? Same as always? Do you actually enjoy hanging out with an otaku freak like me? Even though there's nothing to gain from it? You know, I need to bring this up. I feel like I haven't brought this up enough. I have to give credit to... Actually, I'm kind of curious. Who's the composer of this novel? Who made like this music out of curiosity? Because to be honest, there's been quite a few times it gets claimed. But I'm actually kind of curious because I have to... With all the faults that I do have with some aspects of the story, I gotta give credit to the music. It's actually pretty good. Shit, I was actually getting wet now.
まあ、正直なところを言うと、お前に優しくしてやることで、俺は女にモテるわけだ。あんなダメ人間にもわけ隔てなく接するなんて、とってもかっこいい人だわ、キャってな。
What the fuck? Misumi-kun? Or, I'm sorry, Misumi Daisuke? Go die in a hole. And to think I was this close to falling for you. Full... What the fuck? If you just didn't open your stupid mouth, nobody would have ever realized you were such a narcissist. Worst of all, as if I even needed to say it, was that it was totally in character. He was being completely sincere. And so, I finally cracked. My lips carved into a bitter smile.
そういえば、岸本のことを聞いたか。まだ入院中らしいぜ。怪我は大したことなかったんだけど、精神的にかなり参ってるらしい。いいか、アタク。女を落とすのに一番手っ取り早いのは、弱ってる時に優しくしてやることだ。
God damn.
というわけで俺、本気で岸本の見舞いに行こうかなと思ってんだよね。
I am having a hard time finding any positive aspect to your character, my dude.
そういえばタクって岸本と知り合いだったよな。な、一緒に行ってくんね。
Like, God damn, dude. I know teenagers are assholes, but holy crap, you take it to a whole new level, Misumi. It was the typical subject matter for Misumi-kun, but that was beside the point. He'd mentioned Ayase. With Rimi gone, maybe she was someone I could turn to. Oh yeah, Ayase, not Ayase. It's Ayase. Maybe I could depend on someone like her. Ooh. Rimi's already being replaced. Oh, we don't give a shit about you, Norose. Nobody likes you. Oh. Oh. It's changed. The 7th case. It happened again. Another new gen. How long was this damn thing gonna go on for? Was I next? Would I be the victim of the 8th case? The 9th? Anxiety aside, Grimm was pretty much the new gen news guy at this point. He'd been keeping me in the loop about basically everything. It's almost like he's been taking part in these new gen cases. Just saying. I mean, what? Sorry, evil nurse, ma'am, bitch, lit person. Yeah, sorry. Even now, he was going out of his way to link a bunch of blog posts and news articles about it. Seemed like he really wanted me to take a look. Biting my lip, I reluctantly clicked the first link. Ah, the DQN puzzle. Please don't as fuck, roll. You try to say it's one of us anti-DQNs? Huh. With their lower body swapped around shit, it's like a puzzle, both corpses. If only could trade my body in my upper body for some alphas, LMAO. Our Esper boy Nishijo will sniff out the peppers any time now.
Today, 午前4時50分頃、東京都渋谷区の線路沿いで男性3人の他殺死体が鉄柱に吊り下げられているのを通りかかった新聞販売員の男性が発見しました。警察の調べによりますと、殺されたのはいずれも渋谷区に住む無職藤田康平さん、大学生の安沢三郎さん、とび職の高木亮さんの3人です。3人とも胴体の部分が切断され、それぞれの上半身と下半身が別々に入れ替えられて糸で縫合されていました。3人の額にはそれぞれ謎の傷がつけられており、警察では犯人からのメッセージではないかとみて調べています。渋谷では2ヶ月ほど前から猟奇殺人事件が頻発しており、警察では今回の事件も同一犯による犯行の可能性が高いとみて捜査を続けています。
DQN. DQN. Here we go. It's happened again. Can't really escape that now, can ya? Sorry. At the end of the news clip, photographs of the 3 victims were shown. I had seen those faces before.
あいつらだ。 昨日僕に絡んできた。
I'd given them my wallet, but they'd kicked my ass anyway. I'd then fallen unconscious, and when I woke up, Kozupi was beside me. The three of them had been collapsed on the ground, covered in blood. I took my wallet out from my pocket and stared at it intently. When I came to, Kozupi had been carrying it, and she'd given it back to me soon after. Could the person who'd killed those three be? No, definitely not. The last time I'd seen them, they had been beaten to a pulp and covered in blood, but they hadn't been cut in half or anything. Which would mean they'd been killed after Kozupi and I had left. It had to have been Shogun. That wrinkly asshole was trying to provoke me! Damn it. He really was committed to driving me insane. Just how far was he willing to go? I wanted to vomit. I clutched my stomach as it churned in pain. Was I next? Would I be next to die? Just the thought of it terrified me. Rimi, save me, please. Where did you go? Weren't you supposed to protect me? Oh. Kishimoto Ayase was lying in a hospital bed, idly gazing out the window. No bars lined the outside of it, a fact which set it apart from those at Arc Heart Medical, where Ayase had stayed in the past. All that stood past the window's frame was the landscape of Shinjuku, decorated by skyscrapers and illuminated by the sunset. Flocks of pigeons soared freely through the sky, flapping their wings to their heart's content. Every now and then she would gaze upon this sight with a pained expression. Her slightly tired eyes were empty and bleak. Her irises reflected nothing. Her lips, which could let flow a voice so beautiful it shook the voice of Shibuya, were now sealed tight. Not even so much as a hum escaped from them. Following her suicide attempt, an event which caused quite the turmoil, she had been admitted to the psychiatric ward of a large hospital in Yoyogi. Her injuries were already very nearly healed. According to the doctors, it had been nothing short of a miracle that she had been able to survive a fall from that height, let alone with barely even a scratch. However, she had indeed hit her head fairly hard, and as such, she had been rushed to the hospital, primarily so they could see how the situation would develop. It had already been over a week since then. However, despite her having been admitted for such a reason, all it seemed to entail was a few rudimentary tests taken every couple of days or so. Beyond that, she had been rather neglected. Her hospital room was private, with no other beds inside it. Ever since her stay had begun, her D-sword had been leaning against the window. It constantly emitted a blue light, yet nobody who visited ever seemed to notice. Not that there had been many visitors to begin with. Phantasm fans would attempt to force their way into her room daily, but as they always caused a disturbance in the process, the hospital had an excuse to forbid them from visiting her. And since Ayase was somewhat detached from her family, there were almost no others who came to visit her. Her fellow band members had made an appearance once, but Ayase used that opportunity to announce her decision for the band to break up. They had not contacted her again since.
Kishimoto-san, 体温計ピピってなりました?
A nurse wearing white scrubs opened the door to the room, then swiftly entered. Ayase slowly turned to look at the nurse's face, then took out the thermometer that had been resting under her arm. It was as if she had only just remembered its presence. The nurse took a look at the recorded temperature shown on its digital screen, then took note of it on the clipboard she had brought with her.
37度1分と。ちょっと熱っぽいかしら。ズキズキするわ。頭。
Ayase grimaced in pain once again.
あら、また頭痛？でもそれは薬の副作用よ。気にしなくてもそのうち良くなりますよ。
A side effect of the medicine. Having recorded her temperature, the nurse consoled Ayase with a kind smile. Her expression was so gentle it was clear to all how she was able to put her patients at ease. And yet, despite the nurse's attempts, Ayase simply pushed her hand against her forehead as she shook it back and forth. Ayase had been plagued by mild headaches ever since she had first been hospitalized. They're not especially painful, but they still left her with an uncomfortable feeling that refused to go away. One that felt as if her brain itself was convulsing. It even reached the point where her ability to think was impaired. As well as this, her body would feel as heavy as lead. Ayase had experienced such symptoms in the past. Namely, when she'd been institutionalized at Arkart Medical. Back then, her head had constantly been split apart by painful headaches. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It deprived her of all sleep and emotional stability. Those were the memories she did not want to resurface. The past she had sealed away. The events of around 2 years ago. And yet her headache was causing them to flash back into her mind once more. There it is. In them, a dark room, a single window locked behind bars. Apart from the wall in which that window stood, the rest of the walls were covered with mirrors. Ayase had been placed in the center of the room, sat in a crude steel chair. She was wearing headgear with countless cables protruding from it. Her hands were tied to the back of the chair. Her head was locked in place, with her chin tilted slightly upward. Not another soul was present in the room. Thus, all that could be heard were the sounds of Ayase's labored breathing, and the metal groans of the chair she sat upon. Saliva trickled down from the corners of her mouth, accompanied by moans akin to those of a beast's. If anyone were to hear them, they would have never been able to guess that they would be coming from a girl as young as her. She was being tortured. Slow, methodical torture. One that made very, very little sound. The method only involved one single thing. Not even an action. A drop of water falling from above onto her forehead every 5 seconds. On the exact same spot. That was all it took. And it would continue unrelentingly for 2 full days. The result? Ayase could only think of the drop that would fall next. Her senses were sharpened to their limits, and each time a drop fell onto her forehead, another hallucination would be born. One in which each and every nerve across her body was plucked out, one by one. One in which the bones of her entire skeleton crumbled to dust. One in which her head was pierced by a long, sharp awl. One in which all liquid within her body, including her blood, froze to ice. One in which the skin lining her entire body slowly rotted away before eventually peeling off. Assailed without end by these sensations, Ayase could no longer maintain her sanity. Returning to her senses, she breathed erratically as she tightly gripped the sheets lining her the bed. Her body trembled as though dark memories of hers resurfaced in her mind. The nurse that had been in her room just a moment ago was already gone. Dinner time had just arrived at the hospital, and the clamorous sounds that came from it resounded from down the hall. Ayase tried to recall the words the nurse had spoken to her right before leaving. Was her headache really just a side effect of the drug she was on? Or had it been caused by her hitting her head, perhaps? Or perhaps it was just a hallucination brought forth by her past memories. She was unable to come to a decisive conclusion. Wiping away the sweat that ran down her forehead, Ayase called forth a smile laced with self-loathing.
構わないわ。今さら何をされたって。あれはあの神罰を耐え抜いたんだから。迷わない。私は。
Murmuring in perhaps delirium, Ayase soon became aware of a sound reverberating throughout the hall. The comforting sound of shoes stepping on the linoleum floor. It was certainly not being made by a nurse, and the sound of footsteps was heading right for the room she was in. Someone knocked on her door, and she sealed her lips tight.
失礼します。
Okay, what are you gonna do to ruin life? Okay, what are you gonna do to ruin Ayase? That someone was but a single man. He had come bringing gifts, namely, a large basket filled with all manner of fruits. She could recognize the man, which was far from a good sign. Thus, she stared at him with a dubious glare.
どうも。あ、別に怪しいもんじゃないっすよ。自分は。
知ってるわ。
The man was a detective at the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. He had once shadowed Ayase, as she was originally a suspect for the New Gen case. The detective, relieved by her response, scratched his head. His demeanor was unendingly casual.
いやー、嬉しいっす。君みたいな美人に覚えててもらえて。
Fuck off.
記憶力いいんすね。
The detective moved closer to her bed. Ayase briefly glanced at her D-sword leaning against the window. It lay just outside her reach.
今日はお見舞いに来たんすよ。
そうは思えないわ。目的は
鋭いっすね。
The detective flinched very overtly, his reaction perhaps bordering on theatrical.
まあ、ちょっと綾瀬ちゃんに聞きたいことがあって。あ、これ、よかったら食べてほしいっす。
No. The detective smiled innocently, presented the basket he had brought with him, then placed it at Ayase's feet without waiting for approval.
うまいっすよ。あと、高かった。
いらない。
まあそう言わず、せっかく買ってきたんで。
No.
後でお母さんが来た時にでも切ってもらって。あ、しまった。綾瀬ちゃんはもう何年も両親に会ってないんだったっすね。
You did that on purpose, you sneaky prick. Despite the detective's insensitive remark, Ayase felt nothing in response to it. Her ties to her parents had been cut from a very young age. Her parents had a reputation to uphold, so a child that often caused problems like Ayase had been inconvenient to them, to say the least. Then they're not your parents, they're just... What's the word I'm looking for? Wastes of space for abandoning you. Yeah, that's probably... I think that's what I'm looking for. Yeah. Her only remaining contact with them was the wire transfers she received for her living expenses each month, though it could hardly be called that.
申し訳ないっす。
The detective apologized, bowing down hastily. Ayase had only just gotten over the shock caused by her flashback, so she was in no mood to speak with him. Nonetheless, she urged herself to talk all the same.
聞きたいことって何？アリバイ？
違うっすよ。それは前に散々聞いたし。もう綾瀬ちゃんの容疑は晴れたっす。君は白、真っ白。
目星はついたの？犯人の。
それは教えられないんすよ。捜査上の秘密っす。
Confidential part of the investigation. It's not speaking like you knew or something personally.
匠。
秘密っす。
The detective smirked. He was attempting to laugh the question away. And yet something unrefined could be seen through the cracks of that smile.
しかし西条くんは不思議な少年っすね。彼を見ていると殺人の容疑者にはとても見えない。もしあれで本当に犯人だったとしたら、 まさに人の皮をかぶった悪魔っす。
I don't need to say anymore.
まだ容疑者なのね、彼。
いや、そういうわけじゃないっすよ。
The detective casually denied it with a smile, putting Ayase's persistent questions to rest.
あ、今の話、誰にも言っちゃダメっすからね。
Right.
情報を漏洩すると上司に怒られるんすよ。まあ当然なんすけど。この前も先輩のとばっちりで怒られたばっかで。綾瀬ちゃんも一度会ってると思うんすけど、覚えてるかな。バンさんっていう髪がボサボサで武将髭生やしたおっさんでか。
Literally one of the best characters, Ban Yashuji. Ayase did remember him. When she had been questioned, that older detective had been even more talkative than the younger one she was conversing with now. His way of speaking had been a lot more assertive as well.
あの人がすぐこのバカってどうなるんすよ。
Because you are a schmuck.
そのくせ自分は本来の操作をせずになんだかわけのわからないことばっか調べてて。
Bond's asking way too many questions, which is why you decided to pop in and just kill him.
挙句の果てに自分まで無理やり付き合わされて。最近胃が痛いんすよね。いや、まあ根はいい人っすし、勘が異常に鋭い人で、過去にも難事件をいくつか解決に導いたらしいんすけどね。
その話をするため
Is it?
ここに来たのは。
Ayase interrupted the man, and his smile quickly soured.
ああ、いや、申し訳ないっす。つい愚痴入っちゃったっすね。今の話は全面的に内緒にしてほしいっす。巣は守る、一生のお願いっすよ。
No.
それで
一つ目はなんであんなことを。
Despite his ambiguous phrasing, Ayase could tell that he was referring to her diving off the school rooftop.
もう何度も話したわ、他の刑事さんに。
邪神王グラジオールの復活を阻止するためですか。
死ぬつもりなんてなかった。
Ooh, I love the backing track for this.
魂を一つ上のステージに持っていこうとしただけよ。
例の若者の間で話題になった君の歌についても似たようなこと言ってたっすよね。
And that was the second question he had for her. Ayase let out a faint sigh.
ニュージェネのことを歌ったものなんかじゃないわ、あの詩は。グラジオール記目視録詩編のインスピレーションを受けて作った第3章102節よ。世界に邪神王グラジオールが現れようとしている。復活を阻止するにはグラジオールが流した黒い血によって作られた7つの杭が必要。杭は剣へと形を変え、神罰を乗り越えた7人の黒騎士の手に渡る。目には目を、歯には歯を。邪神を背負いし人間だけが邪神王を滅ぼせるの。
I'm like legitimately curious what's like now that we know what Suwa really is like. I'm just wondering what his thought process is currently as she's going over this. You know?
なんか映画みたいっすね。そういう壮大な設定は好きっす。
Ayase glared at the detective in response to his comment.
設定じゃないわ、現実よ。
じゃあ最後の質問っす。
The detective casually brushed away Ayase's objection, though she was all too used to this form of dismissal by now. Not a single person she had told the story to thus far had believed it.
君や西条くんの他にも水明の生徒について何人か洗ったんすけどね。
The detective mumbled to himself as he folded his arms. This was very obviously another act of theatrics, and Ayase had no intention of commenting on it.
何？
すごくバカバカしい質問なんすけど、刑事が質問するようなことじゃないんすよね、本当は。子供じみてるっていうか。
Out with it!
そう。質問する気がないなら出て行って。頭が痛いの。
あ、いや、実はね、バンさんが妙なことを言い出してるんですよ。君たちは魔法使いなんじゃないかって。
Ooh. Upon hearing that the subject of that remark was plural, Ayase raised her eyebrows in suspicion.
違いますよね。
使えるわ。
As she replied, Ayase's line of sight was directed not toward the man, but toward her hand that lay atop her bed sheets.
綾瀬ちゃんって面白い子っすね。
でも、ニュージェネはグラジオールの騎士とは無関係。
ああ、そうっすか。
The detective, completely disinterested in what Ayase had just said, brushed off her words once again, then began to stretch. I forgot that's his ringtone. The moment he did so, a digital sound suddenly cut through the silence of the room. The detective, surprised by this interruption, reached into the pocket of his suit and took out his cell phone.
まずった。病院って携帯禁止なんですよね。電源オフにしておくの忘れてた。うわ、しかも女からだし。
Oh? I wonder.
付き合って4年になるラブラブの彼女がいるんすよ。
He turned his phone off with a grin, forcing the caller to hang up. He then turned to Ayase once more.
綾瀬ちゃんは映画見るっすか？スパークウォーズって知らない？それに出てくるダース・スパイダー伯爵のテーマなんす。今のメロディー。
Ayase had no interest in movies, nor anything of the sort. Having long since decided that she had no obligation to further entertain the detective's questioning, she returned to gazing silently outside the window.
実は自分スパークウォーズオタクなんすよ。あ、興味ないっすか？そりゃ失礼したっす。
Get out.
じゃ、自分はこれで。
With that, the detective concluded the conversation with which he had no partner, then left the hospital room. Ayase did not even turn around to watch him go. But the man gone, all that reflected in her eyes was the twilight sky slowly turning indigo. Ooh, Sua, Sua, Sua. You belong in the sewer, if I had in my personal opinion. I'd showed up at school on Thursday for one reason, and one reason only. To meet up with Misumi-kun so we could go see Ayase in the hospital. Granted, he had more or less forced me to tag along, but I still figured that maybe Ayase could help me out. With Rimi seemingly out of the picture, I needed someone else to protect me, and Ayase was one of the candidates I had in mind. So maybe, just maybe, if she had already recovered somewhat, she might have been able to do something to that effect. And on top of that, with her help, my chances of obtaining a real D-sword would skyrocket. I really couldn't do it on my own. Then again, it was Ayase herself who'd said obtaining a D-sword isn't something one can teach. But still, this is Ayase we were talking about here. Surely she could help somehow. Coming in through the front entrance, Misumi-kun looked around the lobby in confusion. What's wrong? I called out to him.
いや、岸本の病室ってどこなんだろうなって思ってよ。
Had he seriously come this far without knowing that? This guy was beyond belief sometimes.
ここは外来棟だよ。病棟は隣。
そうなのか。
AH Tokyo General Hospital. It was the hospital I'd gone to ever since I was a kid. I'd even come here just the other day, so I was pretty knowledgeable on where everything was. Dr. Takashina's face flashed across my mind, and I involuntarily groaned to myself. As we walked to the hospital ward, Misumi-kun turned to me.
で、病棟の何号室だと思う？
そんなのわかんないよ。
This was a general hospital, so there were obviously a ton of different wards and departments. If I had to guess.
多分外科じゃないかな。でももしかすると精神科かも。
There hadn't been any visible injuries on Ayase after she'd fallen. And considering she'd attempted suicide, her mind had likely been brought to the brink, so her being in the psychiatric ward seemed very possible. Even if I'd been taken to the high psych ward after the uproar at O-Front. Or I'm sorry, even I'd been taken to the psych ward.
タクって物知りだな。
Nah, I wouldn't say that. Thinking that wandering around the ward would cause problems for the patients, we decided to ask for help in the nurses' station. And just like I'd predicted, they told us that she was on the floor for psychiatric patients.
なあ、この前話したよな。女を落とすのに一番簡単な方法。
Shut up! Misumi-kun grinned from ear to ear as the two of us walked down the hall. Was that seriously your only reason for visiting her in the hospital? At least have the common sense to not talk about it out loud. Regardless, I think he'd said the fastest way was act like you care in her moment of weakness or something like that.
俺は今日こそあの難攻不落の岸本を落としてみせるぜ。
Ugh. I can't even say your name right. Misumi-kun shone a pearly white smile and gave me a thumbs up. Didn't matter how confidently he said them, the words coming out of his mouth were totally disgusting. But I guess he could get away with it because of his good looks. Must have been nice being an alpha male.
でだ。お前って岸本と仲いいだろ？
別に。
しらばっくれるなよ。というわけでフォロー頼むぜ。岸本にいかに三角大輔って人間が素晴らしいかを語ってくれ。
無理だよ。
無理とか言うなって。マジ頼むからさ。
No! Have a little restraint, will you? You're at a hospital, not a mixer. With him acting like this, was it even a good idea to have him see Ayase at all? It wasn't like she really cared much about him anyway. The pit of my stomach was getting deeper and deeper by the second.
お、タク。病室はここじゃねえか？
Misumi-kun stopped in front of a door and pointed at the nameplate. It definitely did say Kishimoto Ayase. The door was closed though, so we couldn't actually see who was inside.
いいか？うまく俺に話を合わせろよ。
No.
うん。
No, don't encourage him. For the time being, I nodded in agreement. Although, even if I did get the chance to say something to Ayase, I doubt I'd be able to say much, regardless of whether Misumi-kun was there or not.
おーす、岸本さん。
Misumi-kun opened the door, greeting Ayase with a cheerful tone.
お見舞いに来た。
But that tone didn't last very long. His face immediately froze. Wondering what made him stop, I decided to peek over his shoulder. Huh? What the? Hold on a minute. There's like 3 different D swords here. That's Rimi's in the middle. And then there's Kishimoto's on the right. What the hell's that one on the left? That's not Senna's. That's not Kozupi's either. The room was around 10 square meters in size. Past the entrance, there was a bathroom to the right and a bed in the back. And on the bed... sat Ayase. Stained with blood from head to toe, her hollow eyes pierced straight. What the fuck happened? There's the battler I know. Misumi-kun let out a pathetic scream, then shoved me aside and flew out of the room. I wanted to run as well, but my legs are frozen in place. I quivered in fear. And yet at the same time, I was struck by the bewitching beauty of the blood-drenched girl, as well as the things leaning against the wall behind her. I couldn't move an inch from where I stood. The objects resting there, as if it were the most normal thing in the world, were D-swords. 3 of them, to be precise, including the one I'd seen her wielding before. Each one had a different shape. One had a form so strangely sophisticated it could barely pass for a sword. And the other was shaped like a cross, its form evoking a sense of heart-rending pity. Wait a minute, that's Nanami's, isn't it? Although it looks... Isn't that Nanami's? And the last one, which Ayase had used before, appeared mystical, yet aerodynamic. Why did Ayase have 3 D-swords? Wait, why had I assumed that a person could only have one? Maybe Senna and Kozupi had multiple swords too.
Takumi.
Yeah. She called my name and I gulped. She began to approach me, her body surrounded by an air of elegance. I was frozen in place.
来てくれたのね。
Why are you covered in blood?
どうしてそんなに血が。
Her pajamas were dyed crimson by an abundance of blood. Blood that hadn't even dried yet. The rusty smell of fresh blood seeped into my nose.
黒騎士の血よ、これは。
I beg your pardon? Oh shit, did you kill Rimi and Nanami?
黒騎士って綾瀬本人の。
いいえ。
じゃあ誰？綾瀬はその人を殺したの？
I don't like that smile. Ayase smiled a wide smile, and then she giggled.
怯えているのね、匠。
Frightened but intrigued. Is this a delusion? She stroked my cheek with her blood-soaked fingers.
でも、君を怯えさせているのは、君自身の心の内にあるものよ。不浄なる邪心に打ち勝って、純粋な邪心のみを心に留めるのよ。
Huh?
そうすれば、ディソードは手に入る。
So what you're telling me is get rid of my unhealthy porn addiction and then I'll obtain the D-sword. Yeah, wait, what? That seems... no, I was going for something a little bit more philosophical. What the... Why would you just say that out loud? I'm a very messed up individual. I'm starting to realize that. Huh.
手に入れてもらわなくちゃいけない。君は黒騎士なのよ。 君には力があるわ。
ディソードを手に入れたら僕も殺すの？
Oh yeah, that's a real question. You gonna kill me if I get a sword?
黒騎士を殺してきたんだろう？
惑わされないで。
Pardon?
それが不浄なる邪神よ。
Ayase peered at my face, her hand still on my cheek. Her eyes looked hollow, and yet I could sense a profound radiance buried deep within them. I couldn't take my eyes off of her.
黒騎士は本来なら邪神を制御できるわ。けれど邪神王は巧妙だった。グラジオール記黙示録詩編第6巻2章50節。グラジオールは邪神を少しずつ侵食することで静かに支配を完了し、邪神の暴走を引き起こすのよ。
Gladial Saga, Volume 6, Verse 215. Gladule will gradually erode the domain of wicked hearts, reach complete dominance under a veil of silence before at last driving them to rampage. Erode the domain of wicked hearts. So weaken the landscape or weaken the barriers that wicked hearts possess. Reach complete dominance under a veil of silence. So complete domination where nobody's aware of it. Like, as soon as the domination occurs, it's already too late. Before at last driving them to rampage. And once that control is immediately taken over, with nobody else knowing that the control's been taken over, that's when the rampage begins. So I'm guessing infighting.
負けてはいけないわ。邪神王の精神侵略に。
I'd never made eye contact with a 3D girl for this long before. I was completely captivated by the traces of sorrow, desolation, and vigor in her eyes. I hadn't listened to a single word she'd said.
守って。
When I snapped out of the trance, I found myself muttering that.
僕を守ってくれ。
いいわ。
Nani? Ayase nodded without a second thought, and then she brought her face closer to mine. The stench of blood grew stronger, becoming more and more overwhelming.
これは予定されていたこと。
She whispered softly in my ear. My heart was racing.
君を守るわ。君も私を守って。
With her body smeared in blood, she was so corrupt, so impure, and yet so bewitching at the same time. It was hard to believe that a girl like her was a student at my school, and in the same year as me, no less.
他の黒騎士はもう当てにはできない。最初は予言通りに黒騎士を集めようと思ったけれど、私の力では無理だった。でも匠がいてくれるなら。
Methinks the medication may have had an effect. Just like she had at the concert, Ayase showed me a face that was unbearably seductive, a face she rarely ever showed.
いずれ完全に開くわ。呼吸とその門は。その時、邪神王はこの世に降臨する。だから急いで集めるの。7本のディソード。
Collecting all 7D swords, huh?
私と君、2人で。
There were 3D swords leaning against the wall. In other words, there were 4 left.
うち1本は匠、君が見つけるべきディソードよ。
僕は手に入れられなかった。
Back at O-Front, I'd come so close, but in the end, I'd thrown it all away. I'd given up completely on getting a D-sword.
落ち込むことはないわ。機会はいくらでもやってくる。すでに匠は見えているんだから。
That is true.
それこそが君が黒騎士である証拠よ。
いつか手に入るのかな。
不浄なる邪神に打ち勝てば必ず。
What was wicked heart supposed to mean? Was she saying my heart was wicked and impure because of my perverted delusions or something? Oh god, it would not be easy to conquer that. Probably even impossible, what the fuck? Ayase let go of me and returned to her bed. And right when she did, she suddenly began undoing the buttons on her pajama. What?
着替えるわ。
Oh, right, we should probably get out of here. Flustered, I instantly looked away. I figured I should probably leave the room, but right as I went to...
そこにいて。
Oh boy, here we go. After hearing that, I couldn't move an inch. The only thing I heard after that was the sound of Ayase taking her clothes off, echoing throughout the quiet room. The hospital room wasn't very big. It was slightly larger than my base, but still pretty small. And so, there I was, alone in a tiny room with Ayase. And she was right behind me, changing clothes. I could tell it was happening right behind my back. Shit, I was so nervous, but why? It made no sense. It wasn't like I wasn't used to this kind of stuff. There was a scene just like this in that one, Eroge. A slime girl appears. CG's by Higashi Matashima. Huh?
なぜ目をそらすの、匠。
Well, obviously, I'm a dude, and it's disrespectful to watch a lady unchange, or change clothes.
だって見ちゃまずいし。
My voice almost cracked as I spoke.
恥ずかしいのね。
綾瀬は恥ずかしくないの。
Was she trying to tell me that it was okay to look? I mean, I wasn't into 3D girls, not even remotely. That being said, if she was giving me permission to look, I wasn't gonna say no.
惑わされているのよ、君は。
You should be made aware that you are being fooled.
その感情こそが邪神に侵食されている証拠。
Oh!
惑わされているって誰に？
邪神をグラジオール。
I casually picked up the book on the bedside table in front of me. On the cover was The Gladial Saga, Volume 17, the Book of Psalms and Revelation.
グラジオールってなんなの？
邪悪なる存在。負の妄想の塊。
The manifestation of negative delusions.
人の心の闇に偏在する無意識の集合体。世界に破滅をもたらす神。言い方はいろいろ。
そいつは車椅子に乗ってるの？足が不自由とか。
What are you talking about?
グラジオールは人の形をしているとは限らないわ。もういいわよ、こっちを見ても。
Okay, good. I slowly turned back around to face Ayase. She was already done changing clothes, and for some reason, she was now wearing her school uniform.
なんで制服に？
We're going hunting. Oh, God.
迫っているから、グラジオール覚醒の時が。
Uh-oh.
いつでも動けるようにしておかないと。
Then wouldn't normal clothes be better? Well, whatever. What's done is done.
グラジオールがギガロマニアックスとどう関係してくるの？
ギガロ？何？
Ayase raised her eyebrows in confusion. Seemed like she didn't know. Maybe Gigalomaniac was just the term that Senna used for them.
ギガロマニアックスだよ。セナはディソードを持つ力の持ち主のことをそう呼んでた。ディソードはディラックの海につながったパイプだとかなんとか。
呼び方は人それぞれかもしれないわ。
You know, that's probably the best way to put it.
ディソードは人の邪心を具現化したものよ。
D-sword. Okay, so in her idea, a D-sword is the materialization of one's own wicked heart.
グラジオール記目視録詩編にそう書いてある。第3巻11章23節。予言書なのよ、それは。
As she said that, her gaze was fixated on the book in my hands.
みんなはこう言うわ。私が歌詞によって予知を行っていると。
Also, new portrait. I am not used to seeing front-facing Ayase. I don't know how to feel about this. Neat.
だけど私はグラジオール記目視録詩編からインスピレーションを受けているだけ。その詩編こそ予言の書なのよ。なぜ気づかないの？誰も。
予言の書って冗談でしょ。
事実よ。この渋谷で今まさに起きていることを、そしてこれから起きようとしていることをスイグラーは予言し物語にしている。
スイグラー。
Ziegler.
グラジオール記目視録詩編の作者。個人だけれどツイグラーは強大な黒騎士だったと思うわ。私は。
I was really starting to think that Black Knights was just her term for gigalomaniacs. And if the author of this book was a gigalomaniac, then no wonder he could predict the future. I skimmed through the book I was holding, the Gladiol Saga, Volume 17, the Book of Psalms and Revelation, and what I saw shocked me. It was blank. No matter how many pages I turned, no matter where I looked inside the book, there wasn't a single word. What the hell? I turned back to check the front cover. It wasn't a normal book cover. It was almost entirely blank. All that was written was the title and the author, and not even the name of the publisher. Once again, I tried flipping through the book from the beginning. This is kind of similar to the whole Yua Mia diary thing. Hold on. But even the first page was blank, and no matter how many pages I went through, I couldn't find a single one with any writing.
これ不良品。
どういうこと？
だってこれ全部白紙じゃないか。
何を言っているの？ちゃんと書かれているわ。何度も読んでいるのよ、私は。
そんなこと言ったって。ほら。
Oh boy, here we go. I shoved the open book right in Ayase's face.
どこからどう見ても真っ白だよ。
Oh boy. She can see the book, but he can't. No mutual recognition.
ちっとも白紙なんかじゃないわ。
いや、白紙だって。
ここに字が書いてある。見えないの？匠。
Was she screwing with me? Or was she actually being serious? Maybe Ayase had been a complete mental case all along, and I'd only realized it just now.
君には見えないのね。侵食されているからだわ、邪神王に。
Ayase was dead serious. She really didn't seem to be joking. In fact, I was pretty sure I'd never seen her crack a joke like even once before. I took another look at the book, but I really didn't see a thing.
僕には白紙にしか見えないよ。
そう。
Ayase's shoulders drooped in disappointment, and then she took the book from my hands. Her hands were cold to the touch.
考えたことがある。
Thought about what? The fact that the book is blank?
何が
Have you ever thought about by all laws of aviation, bees are technically not able to fly?
世界は人によって見える形が違うということ。
Okay, now we're getting into some weird shit. I just realized. We're getting into some weird shit, says the guy who's currently reading Chaos Head. The shape of the world is formed by the eye of the beholder. Okay, fine. Okay. All right. Ayase? All right. Ayase, I'm right here. Okay? What?
その際を確かめることはできないわ。概念や認識を他人と完璧に一致させることは不可能だから。でもこれだけははっきりしている。君が見ているものと私が見ているもの、その違いは邪神による影響よ。邪神の集合体が邪神をグラジオール。目覚めようとしている。もうすぐ。
Okay.
もしも目覚めたらきっとこの世に67億ある世界は邪神王が生む混沌によって混じり溶け合うことになるわ。
I was expecting all 6.7 billion people. No, the 6.7 billion worlds in this land shall be amalgamated through the chaos born from the wicked-hearted. Okay.
境界が消え邪神により連結された世界になるのよ。あらゆるものが規則性もなく生まれ、あらゆるものが一瞬で死ぬ。概念も認識も因果律もすべて破壊される。すべてあるがゆえに何もない世界。あらゆる神話と同じように予言されているわ。終末予言、滅びの歌。
The Psalms of the Apocalypse, huh? Was that really true? Was that what was written in that blank book? In the Gladial Book of Psalms and Revelation?
このままでは滅びの結末に至るだけ。今止められるのは私と君二人しかいないの。
どうして僕ら二人なの？
導きよ。
Guidance.
他の黒騎士はすでに邪神王に侵食されてしまった。
The wicked-hearted king has already eroded the rest of the Black Knights. Wait. Ayase had said earlier that the blood on her was from the other Black Knights. Had she killed them somewhere here in the hospital? If she had, then where were all the bodies? Then, right as I thought that, Ayase walked past me and placed her hand on the door.
どこ行くの？
おしっこよ。
Oh. That is so fucking bizarre. I don't know whether my IQ is dropping the further I read this, or maybe, who knows, maybe I'm becoming a gigalomaniac, because this is starting to make me feel like I'm going into La La Land. I'm starting to see delusional shit now. With a deadpan expression, she answered me, then headed off without waiting for my reply.
Huh?
I looked around the room, trying to find more volumes of the Gladule saga, but no dice. I didn't know how many volumes there were in total, but the one I picked up before was the 17th. Volumes 1 through 16 were nowhere to be found. Of course, it was possible that she just hadn't brought them to the hospital. I still couldn't believe that the book was totally blank, despite seeing it with my own 2 eyes. And so, I left the room before Ayase came back. I'm leaving. Okay, so she got covered in blood now. Okay. I'm assuming that blade to the left was Nanami's blade. The other one had to be Rimi's. I just... Wait. When did she have the time to suddenly just do that? And what's the correlation with her and these headaches? Is that... like the medicine having... I don't trust any medication that... she has, and I don't like Sua. I just... Fuck, I need a break.